Okay, so now we're recording and we're ready to go. So Bianca, do you want to start us off? Are you ready to share?
Why not? I'll be very simple. So
Sure.
okay. Sharing this guy.
So I see, oh yes, I see it.
So this is the honey mushroom. Hold on, let me see if I can remember the Latin. Well, I'm sure somebody can remind me what it is, but it's the colloquial name is the honey mushroom. And I was able to find this in the same spot that I found it a previous year. It's in a neighbor's yard.
Uh-huh.
And there was so much of it, I ended up sharing it with part of my chorus. So this is the amount I ended up taking home, and there was about 5 more of this amount in the same spot. So this is blanching it. So then it loses its yellow color. It's an edible mushroom. You drain it, and then I fried it up with butter to get delicious mushroom.
Yay.
I've heard actually that if you cook it for longer, it has an okra kind of slime that actually gets what's the right word, produced by it when cooking, and I heard that's actually really good in pierogi form, and I was going to try that if I find it next year.
So Luke, do you have any response to that? Or Dave? Dave, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I actually saute them for an extended period to reduce the amount of slime. And I cover the skillet for a while to let the heat build up, and then take the cover off. And I usually saute them for quite a while, maybe as long as a half an hour on not real, fairly medium to low heat, and stir them a lot, move them around a lot in order to reduce the slime. And by the way, they are Armillaria.
Yes, Melia, Armillaria Melia. Yes.
Well, those look like they might have been Melia, but there's like 3 or 4 species that we get in Eastern North America. There's a few others as well besides Melia. They're all edible.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anybody know anybody who ever got sick on Armillaria? Yeah, I've run across.
Yes, says Luke.
Yes, I was trying to get it turned off. A chef friend of mine who used to serve him in his restaurant stopped serving them because one of his guests became violently ill as they were eating them. And they were also drinking alcohol with it, and they just had some kind of reaction. And he said it was pretty dramatic, the illness. So he said he will no longer serve any wild mushrooms in his restaurant because he said it's just too unpredictable. But he said he was pretty positive they were honey mushrooms. So.
Yes, I've spoken to 3 different people over the years. One of them is the ex-president of the Washington, D.C. Mushroom Club, who now lives in South Carolina, Tim Geho. Tim told me that he became violently ill from eating Armillaria, and he was sick for 3 days. A friend of mine had a girlfriend who got sick on Armillaria, and another guy I just happened to meet at our local thing we call a mushroom fair in the fall. This guy just showed up, and this guy knew a lot about mushrooms. He brought some stuff in that he had identified correctly, and he said he got sick on them. In all 3 cases, the mushrooms were not parboiled.
Yes, exactly. I was going to ask.
All 3 cases. So I think that's why the old timers always parboiled their Armillaria. And by the way, here in Wyoming Valley, Pennsylvania, Susquehanna Valley is probably a better thing to call it. The area, a lot of descendants of Polish immigrants, and we call them popinkies. It's a very Americanization of a Polish word. Very popular. Probably the most popular wild mushroom in Luzerne County.
I also got lucky with another choice edible. This guy, the wood bluet. Let's see if I have another. I think I have another picture. Oh, this one. Beautiful color. And I cooked it later that day. Let's see if I have it. Here we go. This is what they look like cleaned. It was only a little portion. And that's what they look like cooked. And they don't need to be parboiled. That'll be it for me.
You
Cool.
know, I once told Bob Hosh that I used bluets dried out, and he told me he tried it and he said he thought they were really bitter.
That's a shame.
I've honestly never had that experience with dried bluets. I put them in stuffing and soup.
Love their texture. It has very kind of like a dense texture, and I get a little bit of almost a herbal notes from them when I cook it just with butter. I mean, I don't cook it with anything else, just butter sauteed, and that's it.
I tried to grow them this year. I bought mycelium from Mushroom Mountain, and I followed the instructions carefully, I thought, and we even had a watering system set up to water them, and kept checking, but never got any.
Was it potentially because of the temperature? They need a particular temperature, right?
Well, I'm in Pennsylvania, and they were a partial shade. It was partial shade, and it was in the middle of my garden. So it was a garden row, and I kept checking. They're supposed to come out after the first frost, right? Or when it gets cold. So, but I never had any. So I don't know whether my method was wrong or whether the mycelium, maybe that doesn't always produce.
Did you water them with chlorinated water?
I guess I did, because we connected them up. I had a watering system. And
Yeah, that could have made a difference. I
Oh,
don't
really?
know, but
that's
that could have
interesting.
made a difference. Well, it's a chemical. It might have an
Right.
effect on the fungus. Also, did you just plant them in the soil, or did you mix in some vegetable sort of into the substrate, like woody debris or leaf litter or something
Yeah,
like
I
that?
did the leaf litter. I did the method said to put cardboard down on top of your soil, which I did. I did box board, and then I put layers of leaves, and grass clippings, and then they said to do it like a lasagna. So you put your leaf litter, and then you put the mycelium, and then you put more leaf litter and mycelium, and so didn't work.
I'd check next year.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah, check next year. And also,
Just
Did
use
you use
rainwater or
leaf
something.
litter? yeah, try just to collect some rainwater. That might make a difference. Also, the leaf litter and grass clippings and stuff that you use, were those from this year? From just previous to,
Yes, yes.
yeah, it probably would be better if that stuff was like cured for a year.
Okay.
Now, I don't know that for a fact, but it seems to me like when I find bluets on in habitat like that, old grass clippings or leaves or whatever, that they're pretty old, like a year old maybe at least.
Yeah, I mean, I found them under white pine, and there tends to be a big accumulation of older, previous years pine needles, so that makes a lot of sense. All right, well, maybe next year we'll see what happens.
Keep us posted, Penny.
Okay, I have a couple of bags full of oak leaves from this year. I was going to use in my compost bin when it got too down too far, but maybe I'll save them for the bluets.
Okay, so Lauren, are you going to relent and share or not?
She needs to.
The crowd is cheering, Lauren.
Come on, Lauren. She won't even speak. Come on.
Unbelievable.
Not tonight. Plus, my mic isn't working, she says. Okay,
Yeah, right.
so Lauren, you're on next week. You no excuses next week. So Christopher, you said you had something you wanted to share?
It's too soon. I just found it.
Okay, so I'll put you back on the list and come back to you. Igor, do you want to share what you have?
Yeah, I guess I can. Let's see. How do we do this? Share. Okay.
I can see your screen.
Yeah, this is my more chronological. I'm going to start off with a mushroom that is not my forte, polypores, and you know I go often to Brandon Burns State Forest just for hiking because it's flat and it's easy and the air is very clean and it's far away from people. So so I came across this interesting polypore that was growing on a pitch pine. And this was, I think this was fairly early on in the season. Yeah, July. I don't think I was finding any other fungi anywhere else. But you know, this photo was taken with a flash, so the colors are slightly enhanced. But it was of this kind of a fox red color and had this fuzz in it. And I took the, you know, a picture from another angle to expose the pore surface. And the mushroom matured after that. You know, I was monitoring it over a number of weeks, and it's still there, but it quickly matured and turned into these relatively thin and dark brown crumbling brackets. So it looked pretty horrible after, you know, it matured or reached maturity and post-maturity. Does anybody know what this thing is? Any ideas? You know, Alan Rockefeller, you know, of the sequencing and psilocybin fame, proposed Pycnoporellus, but I'm not even familiar with this genus. Anybody has any ideas at all?
Well, Luke just put
Notice in
in a
the,
notice. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you got it. I said the same thing that you were going to say, Dave. So yeah, Luke just said it was that it could have been in a notice potentially, but I've seen in a notice, I found it and it's much darker orange, but I wonder if this might be a young one.
Well, this was definitely a young one, you know, with the photographs.
I think the problem with Innonotus might be that I'm not sure it grows on pine. I think like Innonotus hispidus, I think, is one that looks a little like this, and I think it's an oak. Grows on oak usually.
Yeah, this is not hispidus. I'm pretty sure of that. But this was definitely growing on a pitch pine. There's no question about it.
Yeah, there's unnoticed species that grow on conifer. I just said unnoticed because, well, for one, it's hairy and it looks like it's soft. Kind of
Yeah, it was very fleshy. It was very
Oh.
fleshy. Yes.
Yeah, that
I
makes
touched
sense.
it and I think it was oozing, maybe some kind of a liquid, maybe. Anyway, so that's that. Let's see. Yeah, you know, we cannot have a session without a bolete. So this critter is a pretty rare bolete that was originally described from Georgia, or one of those Bible Belt states, in the 90s by members of the New York Club. I think Aaron Orarevi and who else was there? I forget on the paper. It will come to me eventually. Anyway, so this bolete is quite rare, and it's very unusual phylogenetically and morphologically. It likes to grow in swamps, and there are no mycorrhizal trees around it, or trees that would produce mycorrhizae with boletes or any other fungi. So I think it's a saprobe, and phylogenetically, it is related to, and I'm going to show some of the close-ups here, the cap, the pore surface. The pore surface actually is very complex. You have these angular pores, almost looks like swillas at times. Anyway, so the only tree that was in there in that swamp was Atlantic white cedar, and I don't think it's a tree known for its mycorrhizal associations with fleshy macrofungi. This thing grows rarely. I only saw it once in 2000, or twice in 2016. Then it took a few years off, and last year was a very dry year, and I think a lot of these swamps dried up, and maybe the mycelium felt it was being stressed. So it started producing fruiting bodies like there was no tomorrow. And you'll find other posts by other people from elsewhere in New Jersey. But again, this species is only found in the coastal plains, in swamps, or very, very wet spots. You will not find it in upland forests. And phylogenetically, it's very close to Chalciporus. But I don't think this is Chalciporus. It's just too big. The morphology is different, and I came up with a provisional name for this thing, which I haven't published yet on Mushroom Observer. I want to call it Palustri balletus, and Palustri balletus refers to swamp, so it's a swamp bolete. So that would be my name for it. So okay,
Cool.
We'll see if we find it again next year, but I doubt it. This is one of those things that comes up like once every 10 years, and that's it. You don't see it again for the next 10 years.
Interesting that its closest relative seems to be Chalciporus, because I think there's some evidence to suggest Chalciporus is a saprobe.
Yeah, I read about that too, and the jury is still out. But if you look at the phylogeny of the whole family, Boletaceae, Chalciporus sits right, very close to the bottom node. So it's a primitive bolete. And I think Boletus purpurea rubellus, which is the name for this beautiful creature, is also a very primitive bolete. And I do think it's also saprobic. Like I said, there was no pine, no oak anywhere close. So what's next? How about this one? I don't know anything about Telephora, and it took me a while to find a possible name for the species, Telephora penicillata. I just thought it was a very beautiful mushroom. I found this in a park in Pennsylvania, Tobyhanna State Park, way out there. Don't ask me how I got there, but I did. Unfortunately, I took the picture with a flash, but you can see that it has a very unusual morphology, and it's still very beautiful. Anybody else has any proposals for this thing?
No,
Dave?
but it is
think
really
there
cool
might be-
looking.
I think there might be one other Thelephora that looks a little bit like this, and Thelephoras are kind of like shape-shifting entities. The same species can look kind of different. But this is a really cool one, as you said.
Yeah, it has these white tips that are very branching, and very contrasts the rest of the fruiting body, which is like this cespitous cluster of stems that I think probably are tapering down toward the base. So I think there was another name of a species that was similar to it, but I chose this one anyway. So that's that. Let's see what else is out there. Uh, yeah, how about this one? This polypore, which used to be in Latiporus, is a southern species, but I think it does occur in New Jersey, especially if you are in the coastal plain. A lot of southern species crawl up the coast and reach our wonderful state, and I think that's where the cutoff for a lot of those southerners is. It's basically the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, maybe Long Island. But this thing used to be in Latiporus, but now there was a paper published recently, and I think it's out there. If I click on this name, it will give me another page, and that's the paper in Mycologia. Just click on that and see what the name of that thing is. Revising the taxonomic placement of Latiporus persicinus within the Latiporaceae. Okay, so maybe this paper is available online for free, and you'll be able to read it. Anyway, so let me go back. We found the species at a place called Scotland Run, and this is our first year in this park. It's a very interesting place because it has an appearance of the Pine Barrens, but based on the kinds of boletes we found there, it's not Pine Barrens at all. We found some very interesting collection of things I only see in upland forests in middle New Jersey and northern New Jersey. So, but back to this thing. Does anybody know how often we find it here in New Jersey? Has anybody seen this before?
Hey, Igor, the only other person I've ever heard of finding it in New Jersey, of course, is Maricel.
Right. Do you
And
see it
then-
at all in your neck of the woods?
I've never seen it here in Pennsylvania, but I've seen observations of it like in northern Delaware and Maryland. So I think you're like right on the money there, saying that the cutoff seems to be like right, the Mason-Dixon line more or less.
Yes. So maybe slightly to the north of that. Like I said, I've never seen this thing with my own eyes, so that was the first time. It bruises really readily. First dark red, and then a brown, and then almost black when it oxidizes further. It's very heavy, and I wouldn't call it soft, more like not even spongy, but more like resilient, maybe not rock hard. So it's a very hefty mushroom, as you can see from the pictures. So
What's
that
the
was,
substrate, Igor?
I read in that paper or elsewhere that it prefers to grow on the dead roots of trees far away from the trunk, which separates it from all the other Latiporus. But it's not a Latiporus phylogenetically, as the paper states. It is related, but it's not in that clade. They try to make an argument from the morphological and ecological standpoint that belongs to its own genus, which they called Cusagiporia, if I pronounce this correctly. Okay.
Did you happen
So,
to section it?
I'm sorry?
Did anyone section it? I was wondering what it looked like, if it was marbled or what the interior looked like.
I think it was very hard. It would be very difficult to section. I don't think we tried
Too hard
this.
to section, okay.
Yeah, and I thought maybe Nina and John saved it, but maybe not. I think we should have saved this collection in retrospect. So let's see, maybe one or two more. Yeah, how about this guy? Another bolete. This was also collected at Scotland Run, and apparently there were lots of collections. So the pictures here do not constitute a single collection. It was basically mushrooms brought in by various people, combined by me into a single group. Vexinum is an easy genus to ID overall, but when you deal with species, it becomes very difficult, especially when you deal with the two core sections, namely section Vexinum and section Scabra. Now, this species, Vexinum albellum, was formerly in the genus Vexinellum, which is polyphyletic. Okay, so it's not your true Lexinum in the sense of Lexinum vulpinum or Lexinum scabrum, or something like that. The brown capped and the orange capped species. But you can see how variable the species is. The caps can be almost white, as the one you can see on the right here, or they can be kind of medium brown. And let me see if I can zoom in here for a better view. Yeah, kind of medium pinkish brown maybe. And it does like to have, cracks in age, and the surface is often corrugated very broadly, pitted, very shallow pits. And scabers, again, vary from distinct scabers to a pattern almost forming like reticulation, as you can see here. And sometimes they're whitish. So again, it will take some practice to recognize these species as or collections as a single species, but they are. And I have sequences to prove that, not of this particular constellation of collections, but my other collections from prior years. It's a very common species, and I know you frequently find this in the pine barrens, as well as all sorts of habitats.
It's
in the
quite
north.
striking how variable that is.
I'm sorry? I missed that part.
He said it was quite striking how variable it is, that's all.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So there are more pictures showing the cap a little bit better, or caps.
Igor,
Yeah.
Igor, absolutely no staining, right? When you slice them?
No, I don't remember if I sliced them, but I didn't have to. I mean, I knew what they were.
Right. But that's just one key to identifying them from the other species in section scabra, is that most of the other ones will stain at least a little bit.
Yes, but
slice
section scabra is exclusively birch associated taxon, and you would not find it in the pine barrens.
This is not from section. What is this in some other subdivision of?
No, this is Vaccinellum. By the way, I was wrong. You do find section scabra in the pine barrens because we do have a little bit of birch there, but the most common species is holopus, which is section.
Okay, so is this section Lexinellum?
No, Lexinellum is a separate genus, or used to be.
Yeah, but what section is Lexinum albellum in then?
Well, Kuhl combined it in the Lexinum, but I don't think this is Lexinum. My understanding of Lexinum is not in agreement with Kuhl. I didn't like that paper. I mean, I understand what the authors did, but I just did not accept it.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I think that's the status quo right now, is they're calling this Lexinum. So I would just wonder
because they combined everything into Lexinum, even things which were hypogeous, from the tropics, all these truffle-like things that were given different names, like Chalmonixia and Royangia. They all got thrown into Lexinum, which I think was wrong.
Okay, so there's really probably no answer to my question here.
No.
Consider this.
Basically, it's in the Lexinellum sensolata, because again, Lexinellum is a polyphyletic genus. Let me close this, and maybe one more, maybe. Well, I'm going to show this. I found Edgivus this last year, only one collection, only 2 fruiting bodies. So I'm not going to tell you where I found it, obviously, but it was in New Jersey. And it has a overall classic look of Boletus edgivus, and it is Boletus edgivus, as per the research by Bryn Dentinger. It's a very variable species. So a lot of things that grow in the West, like rubriceps and edgivus variety, Grand edgivus, is the species genetically. And he sequenced the entire genome of those things, and they're all the same.
I
Um,
thought you were going to say you had these sent to be sequenced.
No, I didn't. No. I know what they are. There's no need to sequence them.
These are pretty classic penny bun mushrooms, right? They call them penny buns. They look like hamburger buns, the color.
Yes, I found them under the Norway spruce. So, according to Dentinger, Edgevus originated somewhere from the Far East and Alaska, and then got distributed, into the United States along the West Coast, through Canada, going to California, Oregon, all these Western states, and then east to the Eastern United States, and then further east into Europe. So, based on the sequencing of various collections, he was able to trace the gene flow from one region to the other, and based on these admixtures of genes, he just figured out that the point of origin for Edgevus was Alaska and Russian Far East. So, all right, so that's it for me, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Igor. Very interesting collections. So Lila, do you want to share next?
Sure, I can go. Let me get things set up here quickly.
And I am going to have to rely on you, Luke, to share what other people sent, because somehow I got deleted from the email.
Okay, I have Brandon and Dave. That's who I saw. If
Okay.
anybody else sent any, just speak up and I'll dig.
I sent you two
Oh, okay.
emails, Luke. So
Okay.
Okay.
I also sent one maybe a day or two ago.
That's Penny.
Okay, I'll dig them up.
All right, so this is one that I found just over a year ago, so early January, and Trametes sanguinea, and I think this is the thinner one, if I recall, and it was growing on black birch, and it was stunning. There were, I don't know, 10 or 12 on this downed log.
What was it called again? Cinnabaranus, this one?
No,
Sanguinea.
Sanguinea, okay.
I think this might be my favorite mushroom.
it's so welcome to see in the winter.
How thin was that, Lila?
Very thin,
Like,
you know.
like,
Yeah, less than an eighth of an inch, maybe. Really, it was thin.
yeah, I say like sanguinea should be like stearium thin.
Yeah.
It's a very colorful species, but unfortunately, it's totally useless for dyeing.
Is it really?
Yeah, but I think it's involved in paper making. Maybe I'll stand corrected on
All
that.
right. Yeah, paper. I think paper. It must work for that. Yeah.
What was that one photo showing a chemical reaction?
Yeah. I did put KOH on it, but I didn't do it right away. I did it like 24 hours after I brought it home.
Ouch.
I don't know if that matters, but anyway, yeah, I didn't have it with me in the field. But it's gorgeous.
What is the sprinkler color for this species? Brown?
I think they're white, aren't they?
Spores, they're white spored, I'm pretty sure.
White sport.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they would be white
Or Intramedes.
because they're a Trametes. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. They're a Trametes.
So all Trametes have white spore prints.
Yep.
Cool. I didn't know that. But like I said, not my forte.
This they look like they might be a little bit thick for sanguinea. Sanguinea, I'm just looking. It's like they say up to 2 millimeters thick.
No, well, maybe I got it wrong.
Plus sanguinea fades, and you found this in January.
Yep.
Usually what I'm always told is if they're this brightly colored still, that you're pretty sure that you got the other one.
Cinnabarina.
Yeah. I'm sorry, 3 millimeters thick. So Pycno or Tremidis sanguineus. I'm looking at the Rivardin's description, up to 3 millimeters thick.
You know what? That sounds like about 1/8 of an inch, though. 3 millimeters.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that fits.
Maybe. Every time I've ever seen them, they're really, I mean, they're like stearium thin.
Yeah, it was very thin. It was hard. I should have cut one and taken a measurement, but it was thinner than the normal ones that I find that are much thicker. So I was really, I didn't think it was right, because I think it's more in the south, and not so common up here, but
Yeah, I think I've seen occurrences up into Connecticut.
yeah.
So they do exist up here. They're just not that common.
Not common, yeah. I should go back and see if I can find any this year.
When did you find this one, Lila?
I think
January.
in January.
Yeah, that would seem to weigh against sanguinea, because if it's a southern species, a subtropical species, you wouldn't really expect it to find it during a cold season up here. I mean,
But they persist though, like any other Tremidis.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It probably grew
right.
earlier.
I find these things months after they fruited. Well, Cinnaberinum, I don't find this one.
It looks pretty fresh for a collection that could be months old.
Yeah, I can't remember the weather. If we had a warm spell or something a few weeks
Exactly.
before.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. It's been too warm for too long.
So like I'm reading Rivardin, he's saying sanguineus is separated from the more common Cinnaberinus by a smoother basidiocarp with a distinct reddish color, not as orange as the commonly seen Cinnaberinus.
Smooth? Did you say smooth?
Yeah.
Smoother basidiocarp. Yeah, maybe. I mean, that is pretty smooth.
Yeah, I think this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is magnified quite a bit. I zoomed in, I think. On
You
this.
think it's smooth? To me, it looks very, there are like these
Smoother.
yeah, whatever you want to call them, like especially the one on the right here.
Yeah, textured.
Yeah,
but-
that one's kind of
Yeah,
textured, but this one's
goosebumps
very
or whatever they are.
smooth.
Yeah.
This one,
It would be cool if you could find one, Lila, and do a cross section.
yeah.
Does Rivardin talk about a season for it?
What does he say? No. Well, I'm reading his European book, but this is also written up in the North American book. I just didn't grab that one.
Do these revive if the weather becomes warm again?
I don't know. I have not
Warm
seen him
and
enough.
wet?
I've not seen him enough to know that.
Mhm. Yeah, I just wonder though, because I know Tremidis versicolor does that. If the weather warms up, it revives and this, starts sporulating again, and the colors come back.
It's funny that in this picture it looks a little bit like Ganoderma.
Yeah.
So
Right.
how big and how thick was this?
Oh, it was very thin, and they're probably, the biggest one was maybe 3 inches side to side.
Wow.
Tiny pores, versicolor sized, pores.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, kidney shaped.
so that was that one. So splash of color.
That one certainly qualifies as the best of 2022. That's lovely.
Thank you. All right.
And that looks like snow in the background in that photo.
Yeah, there was a little bit of snow. What am I doing? Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, let me get this bigger.
Oh, another beauty.
Yeah, it's a good one, Lila.
That's a great photo.
Tricaptum and Mysterium.
You should be hanging on to that one, Lila, for a photo contest, whether it's ours or the NAMA. Not NAMA holds a big photo contest.
Yeah,
I would be hanging on to that if I were you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this was fun. I had to stop what I was doing and I was actually growing on some logs that we got from our neighbors for firewood. But, yeah,
this
I
is
really,
the-
really like that. That was a nice find.
Sorry to interrupt. So this is Sterium complicatum being parasitized by what?
I don't know, some kind of trichaptum. I think.
Trichaptum?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I know. Sterium complicatum with trichaptum.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Not
we can,
well.
Maricel.
But I don't think that there is any relation there. No, no parasitizing. They're just sharing the wood.
Well, you never know.
I never read about it.
They always, they often grow together, which is suspicious. I would be very suspicious. Look at the texture.
That color didn't last on the purple. That was lost pretty quick. Like the next day, it was much paler. So.
I see Sterium complicatum often on logs that have lichen on them.
There's a little bit bits of lichen on this log too.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Mosses and things. I forget if this particular one was oak or hickory. We had both species in the logs. Yeah, I just like the color for sure. Okay. Let's close that and see what else I got here. Oops. I sent an email to myself to try to organize these. All right. And this one I included because this year was the first time ever finding Cincinnatus. I usually find sulphureus, but I didn't really find that this year. I was finding Cincinnatus in different places. So this was kind of a photogenic collection. And then a close-up.
Did you eat any of those?
I did. I don't know if it was this particular one or not, but I did eat some this year. Yes.
Yeah, I like this one better than sulphureus.
So do I.
Yeah, I think I might too. It was really quite nice.
That's a really nice, fresh specimen.
Do you folks prefer this one because of taste or more of a texture thing?
Both.
I'd say taste, because sulphureus has like sort of a funny sort of citrusy kind of taste that can be a little bit strange. And this one is very mild. So you can use it in ways that you're allowing it to pick up other flavors. And it's got a very nice texture. I mean, that's my opinion.
The last time I cooked the yellow one, I actually was able to marinate it actually in chicken stock. So it was very flavorful. Yeah,
This one was easier to take apart into pieces and prep it.
I was gonna say, I like both of them. They're both good, but I think this one has a better flavor and the texture. It holds like a desirable texture longer. Like the yellow ones, like
Get tougher.
you blink and they're tough. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. Does anyone
They
have
dehydrate real good too.
dehydrated? Oh, really rich. I haven't tried rehydrating any. Does anyone have a theory on, or has anyone else last year seen a trend to more of these versus sulphureus? Or is it just me?
There was lots of sulphureus here in Northeast PA, and I didn't see any of these last year.
Interesting.
2 or 3 years ago, I saw quite a few of these.
I only saw the Cincinnatus this year in my counties.
And I'm the opposite. I'm a little closer to Dave, but I saw lots of sulfurious, but I hadn't seen any of this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. So New Jersey had more of this and you guys had more sulfurious. Interesting. Okay. All right, and then one more, I guess. This is like the last photogenic mushroom I found this year. I think it's Galerina marginata. It was late October. Out of focus, but still kind of interesting. It was a pretty day.
It's a good looking mushroom for being so dangerous.
Nah, just LBM.
That's it.
That's a good cluster.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, enough to poison 10 people.
Yeah.
That's it? Just 10?
What, you want more death and destruction? So bloodthirsty, aren't you? Huh?
I got
Thank you,
enough
Lila.
digitalis in the front lawn to do more than that.
Those are some great photos, Lila. Thank you for sharing them.
Thank you.
So, Luke, do you want to go next and share the things from the email?
Sure thing. Do you guys see my inbox yet, or do I have to reshare?
I can see it.
Cannot.
I can.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting in chronological order. So Penny sent this the other day.
I have no idea what this is. I found a dry hard specimen lying on its side in wood chips in my neighbor's yard, under a deciduous ornamental. I'm not sure what the tree was either. And it has pores, I think. And I would welcome any help identifying it. It's about 5 inches. The cap is about 5 inches.
Ratio.
Yeah, it's a Ganoderma.
It's a Ganoderma. Which one?
Well, it depends what tree it was growing by.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a
Reishi.
reishi. It's an old. Oh, you think it's an old reishi? Oh, I see.
Yep.
Huh.
Probably Curtisii. Suge doesn't end up looking like this, really.
Okay. So you're saying the Sugai is with the
Hemlock.
Almost always with
Hemlock.
hemlock.
Yeah, and then this would be with a deciduous tree.
Oak or maple usually.
Okay. So I asked my neighbor, did he like rake it over to the side, or did he pick it up and throw it somewhere else? And he said, no, he didn't even notice it there. But there aren't any maples or oak in his front yard. So I don't know how it got there. But
I've seen this growing from roots of ornamental trees that have been ripped out a year or two before.
Okay.
And you said it was just lying in the yard, like he didn't find it growing?
Right. I didn't find it growing. It was sort of knocked over sideways. And so, the bottom half looks like it might have been underground, maybe. The lower part of the stipe has wood chips encrusted on it.
So it was probably growing up from the dead roots
Right.
of a
Right.
tree.
Right. Well, that's actually the first Ganoderma curtsii I've found, because I usually find tsuga only. So that's interesting.
You know what? I think there's an uncommon variety of curtisii, or maybe it's a good species itself, that grows on pine roots. I think it's pretty uncommon. I may have found it on Cape Cod a couple of years ago.
Are you talking about Meredithiae?
Probably.
I think,
I don't remember the name.
okay.
So,
There's curtisii will occasionally grow on conifer, and they call it Meredithiae, but I think the DNA sequences has not shown it to be a separate species.
Okay,
think-
that's probably what I'm talking about then, because I think I found that in Cape Cod, and I was confused about whether I should call it curtisii or call it the other thing, Meredithiae, I guess. Okay, thanks.
that's all I had.
Okay. So my email is next. So I did my best of 2022, my Pennsylvania edition. So these were I guess when I was just looking through my observations, these are the 5 that really caught my attention that I really liked. So this one, Pleurotus citrinopiliatus. I was excited to find these. I know people find these pretty often. I had up to this point had only ever found a few odd and end ones, and they were always old and really dreadful looking, just dilapidated and rotting whenever I would find them. And for the first time this year, I found these growing out of firewood in my house, out of an ash tree that I had chopped down. The ash tree had been chopped down only for, okay, so this is September. So I think I chopped that ash tree down in April, and it was already dead. So it could have already been colonized, but it seems pretty quick though. Chopped, and they were still pretty thick stumps. But man, what a gorgeous mushroom.
Yeah, beautiful.
I have not seen that up here yet. This
Yeah,
species.
so the thought is, I think it's more than just a thought. I think it's the the idea is that these have escaped from cultivation. It's an Asian species, and it's been cultivated, because I do buy it sometimes. I buy it for work in the restaurants. I think it's one of the better tasting oysters. It's just really fragile. Like I can't saute it. It breaks all up. I have to roast it. But that unfortunately was a little out of focus, but I wanted to show the gills, what do we call that? You guys know what I'm saying?
Decurrent, subdecurrent.
Decurrent. Thank you. Decurrent gills. Yep. And man, these things were producing so many spores. I was literally standing there and they looked like they were smoldering.
Huh.
The spores were just coming out of them like crazy.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's why we're going to start seeing more and more of them, because
Yeah.
Where these things show up, they tend to kind of take over pretty quick, don't they?
I guess I've seen a lot of observations of them in here, Upper Bucks County, like on Facebook, and at least on Facebook, and just, driving around, I'd see them here and there. And down in Philadelphia, when I live in Philadelphia, they do grow down there. I've found them a few times, at least in Northeast Philadelphia, but like I said, they've always been old, beat up. So I've been slowly splitting I took down like 15 ash trees, and I've been slowly splitting the wood over the winter, but I've been leaving this pile there.
Okay, you know what? I think I need to self-correct. I believe one of our members of our Luzon County Club found this species somewhere in Northeast PA this last summer. That would have been the first time I've heard of it up here.
All right. All right, next, Solabolus frustratus. So this is a very common species. We see it all over the place, but this one really caught my attention because of how the caps that had been forming on them.
Cool. I've never seen them like that.
No, me either. At least not that pronounced.
I have.
Oh, you have, Maricel?
Yes, you can count how old it is. It is. You can count the layers there. I found one 10 years old.
Hmm.
So
Now, would it be years or like growth cycles?
what did you say?
I said, now would it be years or would it be growth cycles? Like,
That's what I read in one book. It will be the year. Each year it grows the one of the layers, and the youngest is the lightest, of course. And then you can count backwards. I don't know. Mine
Yeah.
was 10.
Yeah,
That's what
so-
they say, but yeah, you may be
yeah,
right.
so this has about 10 in there too. So where did I find these things at? Oh, somewhere around here.
And I can't. Did you touch the wood by any chance?
Not in this case, but I've tried cutting into this wood before and I had to stop.
Yeah. The wood where this thing is growing, oh my gosh, it's like steel. I do not understand why it doesn't rot. I don't get it. And the things are like, now you touch them, the one that I found here, and they fall off too easily.
Hmm.
Mhm. In a
Do they
sense,
just tend to grow on a very hard wood, like maybe white oak or
Oak.
something?
Oak.
Yeah, it's really tough
but-
wood.
But I know what Marisol's saying though. I think this wood is like, it's like rock hard. Like I've, because I always try to dig into it because it produces a really cool looking pocket rot where you see all these little tiny dots of white rot and these like concentric patterns. And I always try to cut into it, and half the time I stop because I'm afraid I'm going to break my knife because it's
Yeah.
Yep. When I find this, it's the same. I can't, it's like really hard to harvest any of it. But it's not the only type of fungus that I find on really big old hard oak logs that's very difficult to harvest because the wood is so hard.
yeah. So anyway, I thought this was a somewhat unusual growth pattern for this. First time I'd ever seen it where it's so obviously, I guess this is reflexed, right?
Yeah,
Reflexed
Luke,
outward.
thanks for sharing this because I found this, now that I know what it is, I found this recently without the obvious Xylobolus frustralens, like the little ones,
Mm-hmm.
without any of those. And I had no idea what it was.
Okay.
I'm
There's something
100%,
else, though.
I'm 100% sure that's what it was at this point.
Right. So there is another species of Xylobolus that is much more effused and reflex called subpileatus.
Yeah, but it didn't have the huge plates. That thing has like huge plates underneath of it, right?
Yeah, it'll be like, resupinate against there. Yeah, usually I do see it that way, but I guess the reflexed parts, the caps tend to look kind of the same. So I was just throwing that out. There was another species to look at too, but
So what kind of a spore bearing surface does it have?
smooth.
Yeah, I just found out that it is related to Sterium. They're in the same family.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense. You don't see any pores in them.
Okay, next up. Okay, this one, Trichoderma pallidum. I actually learned this one at our foray up in the Poconos this year. I think Marisol found it. The one, the one we did in June.
Oh, yeah.
Victor Gambino.
Yeah, Victor Gambino. Thank you. Trichoderma pilatum. And then I came home, and so that was what, like the second to the last week of June. And I came home on July 1st and found this in my backyard growing on a big piece of oak. Hey, that's the way it goes, right?
Funny how that works.
Yeah. So this is an asco. At first I thought it was a deformed mushroom because that's what it looks like, right? When you look at it, it looks like it was a guild mushroom that was trying to grow that was deformed. It didn't just quite make it. But if you look at the upper surface of it, it's full of perithecia. So like little pimples.
Right.
This was on more firewood, on more trees that I had chopped down.
Firewood is a great thing.
It really is.
Look, right. Is this one inverted? Was it harvested and inverted, or does the cap end up looking like that sometime?
This is the underside.
Right. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's the way I found it on the wood. I may not even have removed that yet.
Oh, okay. So it's the same fruit body.
Yes, that's just the top,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, and this is the bottom. This is the point of attachment right there. And then all of this weird stuff. I'm not really sure what that is. Like I said, I thought it was deformed gills until I looked into it a little bit, and then I remembered we had seen it just a week earlier. Okay, then the next
So
one,
what side's boring the spores?
the top side, all those little pimples.
Cool.
And then this I found at the same tree, Helvella solitaria, or at least in the same area. It was a gigantic oak tree that was in my backyard, a gigantic red oak that had died that I had to have taken down. I also found a lot of honey mushrooms around that area. I don't know if the honey mushrooms had anything to do with the deceased oak tree. Interestingly too, there was also a big gigantic steel spike driven into the side of the tree that somebody had driven in years ago, and all up and down the tree on that side, like emanating from that point, it was all rotted out with all kinds of wood decay fungi like steariums and Trametes and all the the usual stuff that you would find on there. So I don't know what killed the tree, but the iron spike being driven into the side of it, like somebody was maybe hanging like a lantern or something on the side of the tree, something along those lines. That definitely, a lot of rot was starting there. So there was an entry point there. But in the yard around there, and then there's other trees back there too, but this that oak was the closest one to these, Helvella solitaria. So these were fun. I was like literally sitting in a lawn chair in my backyard, and the grass had covered up the stipe, so all I could see were the cups, and I thought they were pizizas or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I went over there and kind of started digging away and found the stems on them and got really excited because I rarely ever see Helvellas, and I think they look really cool.
Is it rather uncommon or rare species?
I looked it up today on iNaturalist. On iNaturalist, it says 150. There's like 150 observations.
Oh, okay.
And in the Bissette's book, it says fairly widely distributed in North America and in Europe, fairly common. So,
Oh, I've never seen it.
yeah,
Yeah, nice find.
thanks. So I did have to do some microscopy on this one because there's a bunch of Helvellas. I think they all, to me, as a person who does not look at a lot of them, they all kind of look fairly similar.
So these are like 2 or 3 inches tall.
Yeah, that looks about right. Let me see. Look,
The fluted stipe is kind of distinctive. I mean, there's that white one, Crispa, I
mhm.
think it is, that has the flute. But this one has a fluted stipe and a pretty distinctive cup on top. So seems like actually pretty distinctive morphology.
Okay. So edge of the woods, oak, maple, sassafras, birch, hickory, and tulip poplar. So all that stuff's there. So 2.5 to 4.25 centimeters wide, and the stipe was about 4 to 5 centimeters long. Like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Small.
So there are the spores. Pretty distinctive. And an asci.
Nice.
So I'll be interested in seeing if I see them back there again. Because like I said, they were closest to the big oak, but I guess it's hard to say though, because there's all those other trees that are close enough that if they fell down that they would land in this area. So I suppose I'm always told that that's close enough.
So Bianca was asking if this is considered a false morel.
I don't. I never considered it a false morel, but it's closely related to a morel, as far as I know. You know, in the Bassett's book, it's sitting right in between the sections of the false morels, the gyrometras, and
Right.
proper morels. So they're all kind of in that same group.
Would you consider this edible?
I did not eat this. No, I don't think there was any edibility stuff on it in their book. Let me see. No,
think
they
the
don't.
pe-
They don't mention anything about edibility. And I think people do eat some Havellas, but I don't have any experience personally with them.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think people eat crispa, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah, I've never found enough of them to even make myself have to even wonder about it, to be honest with you. Okay, my last one, Perenniporia tenuis variety pulchella. So they call this a perenniporia. Perenniporias are supposed to be perennial. And this thing was so thin, I can't imagine that it was perennial, but I found this here in July. So I guess maybe it'll be worth going back there and looking again to see if if it's still growing there now or into next year. It was growing on the undersides of old boards laying out in the woods. And looking, I see like Marisol has an observation where she found them on old boards too.
There are
So
oh yeah, Penuis variety. Yes, I saw that.
yeah. So variety pulchella is the bright lemon yellow one.
Mhm.
So the pores are fairly small in there. What did I say? 3 to 4 pores per millimeter. I thought this was paint at first from a distance. It looked like paint. It looked like paint, but then I looked a little closer and I could see like the edges and I could tell it looked like it was definitely fungal, but I figured it was some sort of crust. Yeah, can you see the way it looks on the boards?
Yeah.
It was causing a white rot. So it was on the underside of the boards. I flipped the
Right.
boards over.
Good
But
find.
then, thanks.
Oh,
But then,
look at that.
look at those pores. I put it up to a loop and I was like, oh, all right.
Great shot.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a
Thank you.
winner.
So, like I said, it was pretty thin. 0.5 millimeter. Oh, wait a minute. Context extremely thin. Those tubes are only about 0.5 millimeter deep.
And they're a little
So-
irregular.
If they're
Yeah.
only, they could live on that.
I'm sorry, Bianca, what'd you say?
It looks like a honeycomb, so I was saying.
Oh,
they were
yeah.
so small they could live on that.
Yeah. So I read that this genus Perenniporia. So we find that one called Frexinophila fairly often. It's like a big, gigantic woody conchs that grow on wounds of ash trees. But it's a polyphyletic clade, so I guess it'll be broken up at some point. So I would be, based on morphology, this doesn't really seem to fit with anything else that I usually consider a Perenniporia because they're usually thick and woody and multiple layers of tubes. So
Which is the one you find on Locust?
Frexinophila. And then there's another one called that I've never personally seen. I'm sorry, not locust, on ash. If I said locust, I misspoke. Ash trees.
And those things look like Ganoderma applanatum or something like that, right?
Yeah, they're big, hard, woody, just hard conchs. You need a saw to get them off the tray if you want to take a piece. Like quite literally, you need to take a saw to them. And there's another one, Fraxinia, that supposedly grows at the base of the trees of ash trees in the same genus, but I've yet to ever see that one. We're finding it's harder and harder to find any ash trees to see anything growing on them. So,
Right.
in my area. All right, that's my five favorite observations of the year.
Great, Luke.
All right, so Dave is up next. Should we be doing your best of, Dave?
Yeah, we can save the other ones.
Yeah, I think
So
we
my
did.
best stuff is based on just sort of
It's very
things
subjective,
that,
right?
things that are uncommon.
Yeah.
So a lot of these things are really small things. So this Flammulaster what is it? Rhombospores or rhombulospores? I guess it's rhombospores.
Rhombospores.
The spores, I've been finding these things on my property line and maybe one or two steps onto the neighbor's property, growing apparently in shagbark hickory debris, nut husks and bark and stuff like that gets incorporated into this moss. And I usually find them in late June or early July. And I've been finding them for a few years, and I've been pretty sure they are Flammulaster. Now, one thing about genus Flammulaster is a lot of times you'll see these appendiculate deposits like this. In this picture, you can see it. See the little triangles? You get these
Yeah.
little velar remnants that form a triangular shape. And you get that same thing on the more common Flammulaster erinaceus, which is sort of a darker mushroom. So these guys have like a yellowish spore print, ochre sort of yellow spore print. And the spores are really difficult to photograph because they are very, very much hyaline, which means that, they have like no color. So these were mounted in Congo red, and I must have taken 40 photographs before I got the camera to focus on these things the right way. But you can see why it's called rhombosporus. Look at the spores are shaped like a rhombi, with an apiculus, right? They look almost a little bit like Entomomus spores, but they're not quite as angular. So this collection was, and see, they're really small. That's growing here on a hickory nut husk, not the shells. That's a husk. And these were sent to Steve Russell, and he sequenced them. So we have a sequence for this now. And as far as I can tell, there's not a lot of sequences available for this sort of thing. So it was a good one to have sequenced. And I'm pretty sure that's the right name, Rhombosporus. There's like two or three other species of these Flammulaster that produce these small yellowish fruit bodies. And for all I know, though, that maybe there's not three species. Maybe they're all the same. They're just not collected very often, and need to be studied more. So this was a good one to find and submit, and I got decent photos of it. So that was an observation I really liked from this year. And let's see, what do we have next? So as far as I can tell, this is a fairly uncommon Pluteus. And when I found it, I thought this looks like an uncommon Pluteus. It's really got these radially aligned innate fibrils. So they're not like real fibers. And the stalk is also very much longitudinally innately fibrous. I guess those are probably innate fibrils. So this looked a little bit odd to me, like not your typical something from the Cervinus group. And these were found during very dry weather also, during dry, hot weather. Growing, I think these were growing on birchwood. I'm not sure. I may have written it down here in the observation. But these were sent to Steve Russell also, and he sequenced them and got a really nice, good ITS sequence that Alfredo Justo then came on and said, yes, that is what it is. Pluteus, what was it, Atro marginatus? But got a lot of nice pictures of this Hymeniocystidia. There were lots of Hymeniocystidia on the gills.
Oh,
I
yeah.
got several photos. Yeah, that's a nice thing about Pluteus. You can usually find a lot of Hymeniocystidia, and sometimes the Chylocystidia and the Pleurocystidia look a little bit different. These here in this picture are probably mostly Pleurocystidia, I would think, because they really have big horns. And then some of them don't have more than, some of them will just have like an acute apex, right? And it comes to a point and they won't have several horns. But as soon as I saw these, I thought this looks pretty interesting. They were not in very good shape. They were kind of old and fragile. The one, I think I only managed to salvage one of them to put into the dryer. They look really nice in the photo, but it was very dry, hot weather. And I think the one of them was actually completely insect riddled. But I sent a sample into Steve and he got a good sequence out of it. So that was a nice observation. I'm not sure what the wood was for that though. I'd have to see if I wrote it down. Oh, okay. So here's one of the other very few observations of this numerical taxon, one of Rod Toulous's numbered taxa, was also found by Igor in New Jersey. And for a while, this was only known from Quebec. But this one was sequenced and it was a pretty good match for, I guess, one of the collections that comes from Quebec. It's not a very widely collected mushroom. It's an Amanita in section vaginate. And when I first found this, I thought, look at how deeply buried the stipe base is. And also it's got the round, very prominent, like a hemispherical umbo on the cap. And I thought, wow, this looks like something in what Rod calls series penetratrices, the penetrating amanitas. But I think maybe this one was buried, I think possibly because it had fruited during very dry weather. There was hardly anything else out. I remember this day. I walked, well over a mile of trail, and the only other thing I saw were a few rotting red russulas. And then I found this, and it was pushing up leaf litter. The first photo actually shows that, where it was pushing up leaf litter. And I think what happened was that a little microclimate sort of formed underneath the leaf litter. Maybe it helped hold the moisture, and maybe that moisture persisted, a few centimeters into the soil. And I think that's probably why this mushroom fruited, was because it had that little advantage of being in this sort of little microclimate, this little
Is that a vulva at the base, Dave?
Yes, that's a membranous vulva, cup-like vulva, which you'll see in a lot of the species in section vaginate. No ring, no partial veil. There's a few taxa in section vaginate that have a partial veil and form a ring, but most don't. So people would call this a grisette. Once upon a time, all of these grayish section vaginate mushrooms were lumped into the names Amanita vaginata. And here's maybe the most interesting thing about this one. The spores are ellipsoid. broadly ellipsoid to ellipsoid. I mean, the ones that look kind of round are probably just not oriented correctly to see, to see how long they are. And so that's it. That's unusual within section vaginata, except in what Rod calls Starp's rooseveltensis. So is this thing related to Amanita rooseveltensis? I think Igor made a comment on his observation, which I think Igor, yours was collected in 2021, if I remember, because I just reviewed this earlier today. And I think you actually had said it reminded you a little bit of rooseveltensis. Now, this one might be a little darker than usual because it was buried. I don't know. But some of these leaves were actually cleared away to be able to make a photograph that wasn't just a pile of leaves. So that was an interesting one. It was sequenced and we got this interesting result. And in fact, I just sent an email to Rod Tulas this morning, just bringing his attention to this. And he wants Steve to try to see if the sequence that he got includes any other areas of the genome besides ITS. So it's an interesting thing to find. And the photos came up halfway decent as well. So that was good. Oh, this thing. So this is, what the heck is it? This was found in a wet, damp area in very dry weather. It was dry last summer. So I was spending a lot of time going into like swamps and mossy, wet areas. These were in moss. This color, this is an accurate portrayal of the color. They looked like this. They were bright orange, completely almost the same color throughout. Maybe the stipes are a little bit lighter. But I don't think I got any spores to fall out of these things, which may not have been all that illuminating anyway, even if I did get some. But I sent these to Steve Russell, and he had them sequenced, and he got a ITS sequence, and it basically doesn't match anything. I mean, there are matches because if you do a blast, it's, you're going to get some sort of result. It's just, these are very, very statistically low confidence results, and they were all over the place. Like a Cuphophyllus from Australia, some Lepista, like high up on the list was a Lepista. Lepista is bluets. Well, at least that's one kind of Lepista. So this appears to be some really rather unique type of mushroom that, maybe it's going to need, excuse me?
Would it be under waxy caps?
See, that's what I proposed. Hygrophoracea, which is just the family into which wax caps are placed. And Cuphophyllus is a genus of wax caps, although morphologically, these don't really look like Cuphophyllus. But that was one of the highest matches with the blast, was some Cuphophyllus from Australia or someplace. And but it wasn't a particularly reliably, statistically reliable match. It was a very low, what you call percent identity. So in other words, there were a lot of characters in the DNA sequence that didn't match. A significant number didn't match. So, but that was as good as it got. So that's what I proposed, Hygrophoracea. But we don't really know what this is.
What was the slime factor on them? Were they?
No, they were not sticky. They were not slimy. So they're not. The first thing I thought when I saw them was it was some sort of Gliophorus, which is another genus in the Hygrophoracea, the wax caps. But they weren't slimy. They weren't sticky. I think I even put that right into the notes on the observation. So yeah, that's a good question. Yep, because that was kind of my first question when I saw them. So hopefully I can find these again next year.
Cool.
I
They
know
have
the
any-
exact spot. Oh, God.
They have any weird, interesting smell?
I,
Distinct?
I don't remember. I may have written something down here. I don't remember any kind of an odor. I may have forgotten to smell them, which really I should try to remember to do that. I don't think I put anything in here about odor. No, that would have been good to do that actually, and I don't think I did. Oh, this is the next thing. Okay. So this Entoloma subgenus Alboleptonia. That's about as good as we can say about these things for now. And so I made several collections of these and sent most of them to Steve. He had them sequenced, and that's about the most we can say now is that they represent some species in this subgenus of Entoloma. And when you first look at these, you might not think Entoloma until you get some spores to drop and then look at the spores under the microscope. And then of course, you can see that, they're at least Entolomiaceae, I guess is the way you'd say it. But so I got Tim Baroni involved in the discussion, and he doesn't know what they are. So Tim had one or two proposals for at least the species close to these, but in each case, there were some like glaring differences. And we were able to decide together that they were not, these species that he had named. So there's your spores, and you can see they're angular, right? So they're like polygons. They don't have a smooth circumference. They have, a segmented perimeter, right? So it's like they're like little polygons. So they'll call that angular usually when you look in a field guide. So very interesting. In a swamp. Now I don't even know, if we have like a wet summer next year, I might not even be able to get into this spot. We'll see. But I'm hoping to collect more of them because what I'd like to do is I sent most of what I had to Steve, or else maybe I brought some home and chopped them up and, tried to do some microscopy and didn't really get all that far. But as you can see, they're very small. So not that much material has survived, and pretty much most of it got sent to Steve. And I don't even know if he still has it, because Tim wanted me to send him some. He wanted to do his own analysis on these, which would have been, really, really good because he is, the North American expert on the Entolomiaceae. And so maybe, I know where I found them. I will look again next year in the summer. It's a spot that I go to often. And so not, not the most striking mushrooms in the world, right? But those orange ones were pretty cool though, right? Those ones that I didn't know what they were. Okay. That's what I have for this week. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dave.
Interesting things.
Yeah, very.
Dave, who did you say was the guy for North American Entolomiaceae?
Tim Baroni.
Oh,
He
Tim.
has a general North American and Canadian field guide on the market right now. It's a good field guide.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Tim Baroni. He comes to NAMA or NEMF sometimes as well. He's retired. He was on the faculty, I believe, SUNY Cortland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. He's the Entoloma guy, though. He knows the Entolomas better than anybody, probably.
They,
Yes, Maricel.
there is a man from Holland.
Yeah,
Uh,
Nautilus.
His name Chiel Nordielos. He's the expert.
Oh,
Yeah, but
okay.
Yeah, but
And
that's
he
only,
has a site in Facebook just for entolomas.
yeah, but he's only doing European stuff.
I found some documents online that he did about some American species too.
Well, you know what, Marisol, if you wouldn't mind, if you can send me an email with like a link or something, I'll join that Facebook group just to put
Yeah,
those
it's called
guys up.
Entoloma. That's it.
At Facebook, Ensaloma, I'll
Yeah,
find it.
Mhm.
Yeah, even a Neanderthal like me can probably figure that out. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I will join that group just to put
Mhm.
those up
Yep.
because,
He's
yeah,
very
I'm trying to
knowledgeable.
figure out what they are. Thank you.
Are you ready, Brandon?
Yeah. I'm going a little out of order here. All right, so we're starting with the Lentinellus vulpinus. I selected this one for the best of just because it took me a while to figure out what it is, and I think it's kind of rare for our area. But this is a saprobe on what is likely a red maple. It's got a little bit of a fuzzy cap. And here we're showing these really jagged gills. Interesting looking mushroom. It's got this really cool reticulation on the cap, kind of towards the margin. If you could zoom in a little bit there. Yeah, so it's hairy on the top, and then toward the margin, it almost looks like hair, but that doesn't quite wipe away. That's just kind of the texture of the edge of the cap there.
Is this sort of textural variability on the cap? Is this what separates this from your sinus? Do you know?
Yeah, yes, that, and this is another way. The gills are much, what do I say, wider. The blades are much wider.
Oh, yeah, your sinus has narrow gills. You're right. Yeah. Oh, thanks.
The ratio to the flesh, like the thickness of the gills to the thickness of the flesh with their sinus is more even. Whereas with this one, you can see very thin flesh, really large blades,
Yeah, the gills are like 10 times as wide
Right.
as the context up on top. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. Thanks. Did you taste it?
I don't think I tasted it. No, I didn't know.
Well, lucky you. You didn't have to.
Okay.
I don't know about this one, but I know that Ursinus is perhaps the worst tasting mushroom in the world. It is just absolutely disgusting.
Really? All right.
Oh,
Not know that.
oh.
But I wouldn't taste that one either because that one's relatively distinctive, and I find that one pretty often. So you can tell it.
I think the first time I found Ursinus, I didn't know what it was in the field, and I tasted it, and I still remember that. That was a while back, but I still remember it.
I might do
You
it.
tasted it the rest of the afternoon.
God, yeah, yeah.
I thought Sarcodon was the worst tasting mushroom in the world. Sarcodon imbricatus. That's I think that's the one. Some people think it tastes good, but it was horrible.
Sarcodon is bitter. These things are bitter, acrid, peppery, and even like disgusting in difficult to describe ways. They are really bad.
Well, I'm definitely not going to taste it then.
All right, so where are we at? Oh, this is the one I can never pronounce. Scyzospora, Scyzospora,
Yeah, great
Mycetophila.
Scrabble word, huh?
Yeah, right. Couple Y's in there. Z's.
Yeah, you would need to use a blank as a Z though, I think. So I don't,
Yeah, right.
that would be a tough call.
Well, in Greek, syzygo is like your mate or your husband or wife, and
Yeah,
so that
that makes sense with this one
Yeah.
because it is a very specific parasitic fungus on only one genus, well, one species of, wait, which one is it? Gymnopus, right? Gymnopus dryophymus?
Yeah, Gymnopus dryophyllus it grows up. Dryophyllus.
Dryophyllus, right. But I included this one because I had never seen anything like it before. It's absolutely one of the coolest fungi I've ever found. It's just these huge white clouds that are completely engulfing the gymnopus there. Actually, I take that back. The way that it starts in this photo shows that pretty well. It grows just under the top layer of the Piliopellis. That's how it starts growing, and it starts growing with these little cups. And those little cups turn into those big white jelly fungi type deals.
Just to be clear, do they actually look like rotting apples in real life, or is it just my brain?
Yeah, I mean, they look like rotting something, certainly.
They look kind of like brains.
I'll give you that.
But they're also kind of beautiful. I mean, I spent a lot of time with them trying to take good photos. They are white, and this is a little bit older, so it's kind of browning and hardening up. But when they're white and bright, they're pretty beautiful. And then that last photo in this section here shows the host fungus, the Gymnopus.
What kind of habitat was this?
Mixed woods. This is actually from Michigan. I should note that.
Okay.
Gymnopus dryophyllus grows anywhere there's leaf litter or even needle litter. I think dryophyllus means that it's associated with oak, but it's not. It's a saprobe. It's not a mycorrhizal species, and it grows all over the place.
Okay. So we could find
Anywhere there's wood.
Yeah.
Great.
And I hope Igor is still here so he can talk about this one. But this is Alexinellum that we found at Scotland Run, which he was referencing earlier. We found some kind of cool boletes there. But this is a yellow bolete, unstaining.
It is staining.
It is staining?
Yeah, this kind of Alexinellum is going to stain. Yeah. So I actually posted this on the Mo, I think your fruiting body, which I preserved because I wanted to sequence it. It happened to be the largest one, I think, on the table. I did not expect to find this Alexinellum in these woods because I would probably see this kind of mushroom in the upland deciduous forest, not in the Pimbarency or semi-Pimbarency habitat of Scotland Run. But when you slice this mushroom, the flesh is going to stain red, which is very common for certain Alexinellums, like Crossipodium or Lexinum rugosiceps. That's a text species that we don't know what it is actually. Anyway,
Yeah.
so go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I initially, when I was looking into this and I was going back on my notes, I had written down rugosipes or rugosips.
Rugosiceps. Rugosiceps. Rugosiceps means wrinkled head.
Right. And I
Um,
think that I got away from that because I didn't think it stained, but I don't know that I brought any of these home, and maybe I just didn't observe the staining when we were looking at them in the field.
Yeah, I photographed these sectioned, and they do stain. Sometimes they stain very quickly. It's a kind of a reddish brown or brownish red, like like a oxidized carrot kind of a staining.
Mm.
Not like a pure red color, but I think there's some browns in there mixed in, which gives it kind of a more earthy color to it. I don't know, but they do, and it's a difficult section of what now is Vexinum. Again, like I said, the core paper collapsed a lot of things into Vexinum. I do not necessarily agree with that kind of a move, because usually phylogeny molecular phylogeny splits everything. Core did the opposite. He actually merged things together back into Vexinum. He redefined the genus as something more broad, which I think is very unusual, again, move for the trends that phylogenetic analyses show.
Right.
But this would not
Not much of an
section.
of an advancement there, putting them all back into
No.
Lexina.
I mean, what he did, he said, well, our phylogeny supports the greater Vexinum, and we say that all these other genera, should be collapsed. Vexinellum is polyphyletic. And then, he shows this humongous and messy tree, and he doesn't do anything else. Like, well, proposed sections, if you don't feel these are separate genera, and Vexinellum is polyphyletic, why don't you just give those sections names? And he didn't. So all we have is just this gargantuan mess of Vexinum, and I dispute that. I mean, it's a well-written paper. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to go that way. I'm a splitter by nature, and I think that's where things are heading. It's going to be an internal, eternal expansion, as opposed to be a what cosmologists call what do they call it? When everything collapses into singularity again, the Big Bang, and then the opposite.
Oh, what is entropy?
Not entropy. No. Entropy is what drives the expansion of the universe. So the collapse of everything into the singularity from which the universe formed would be the opposite thing. But you can see actually here, maybe it's some kind of a optical effect, but the area where the stipe is injured, it sort of looks a little bit reddish. Maybe.
Yep, now that you say that, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, Rugose caps, they're bright yellow, and the scabers are also a little bit yellow. It's very imposing, very nice looking, quote unquote, Alexinum. So I do.
I had to leave for a second. Is there a species name on this?
I did not propose any species for this. Again, it's a very poorly understood genus or section, if you will, of Vexinum now, and I think things have to be sequenced, like Apex rugosiceps has to be sequenced, and we have to redefine or establish species concepts for these published taxa. So I think it would be erroneous to call it Crossipodium, because that's European species. I don't think we have Crossipodium here. I think all of our Lexinellum, in a broad sense, are very endemic, and a lot of them will turn out to be new to science. That's my opinion.
Cool. I have another one. Oh yeah. So for the best of, I tried to pull out some of my better photographs throughout the year. Not necessarily interesting finds, but thought this was a pretty good photo of Spiracis spatulata from Rancocus.
Sweet.
And here we have Trematopsis cervina from Brendan Byrne. Some sort of marasmius species.
Nice, nice picture.
That's pretty.
Yeah, that's insane.
Did you count the gills?
No, is that a thing?
For Hebeloma, it could be. I'm not sure about Marasmius.
This one I
They're
learned-
widely spaced. I mean, they're just like finite number of gills, so you can count them easily, probably in a minute.
You could
was a
actually
joke.
count these ones, yeah.
I would say they probably
There
25.
aren't many- Looks like there aren't many short gills, which is a good thing to notice.
And then this is, are we calling this Fomes graviolens,
Yes.
graviolens, or is it
Yes.
Lobifomes?
Globifomis is the older name, and I think it went back to Fomes.
Okay. So sweet knot is the colloquial name.
Yeah, I love this mushroom as far as polypores go.
What's the colloquial name? Say it again.
Sweet knot,
Sweet nut, N-U-T?
Knot, knot.
Thank you.
Why is it sweet?
I
I
don't
was gonna
know.
ask that.
The
I
smell,
don't know.
it smells sweet when it's fresh.
Oh, but
Suppose,
this was on a sweet gum. That was my only.
Yeah. no, it's because of the smell. Supposedly they used to take it into like people used to bring them in their homes in the old days to like as an air freshener.
Oh, cool.
Supposedly.
Does this mushroom have any other uses other than being a cologne for home?
Not that I know of.
Dyeing. I think Ursula Paul, who is into dyeing, took a bunch of these home from one of our forays in the past.
The pore surface on them is purple, so that might make sense.
So maybe she's using them for dyeing in some way. It's possible. We have to ask her because she had the basket full, hauled away from one of the forays. And I'm like, why are you taking these with you? They're useless.
I like the slug on that one, Brandon.
Yeah, it's Carolina mantle slug. On lion's mane, Heracea marinaceus. Just a cool little picture of a slug having a snack.
Not for very long.
Yeah, I let him have a few more bites, and then I took it.
Oh, you do share. Oh, wow.
I shared. I let him have a few more bites. It took a while, but
All right, this is Sue's stuff.
Well, this one I found in my neighborhood, and I had never seen it before because it's a cup fungi, which is the colorations were all wrong. So I put it on Mushroom Observer and somebody identified it, and sure enough, it was on Mushroom Expert, and it's a genus I wasn't familiar with. And the description of it had great microscopic, unusual things. So I brought it down to a foray and passed it over to Maricel. And Maricel did the microscopes on it and did even more confirmation that this is a species that I don't believe is on our club list. Well, there should be pictures of the microscope.
Oh, that's neat.
What is that?
It's got a strange name I can't even pronounce, but it's what is it? Leonidas. It used to be called Mydotus, but it's now as Ionomydotus irregulus. And it's interesting because the cups are like folded really close together, folded in half. And I think the only other observation we found about that when I looked it up was something from Dave for years ago, so he might remember it.
So what is this lighter colored stuff,
It's
that has
powdery.
stuff-
This is
I'm sorry.
powdery.
It's
I
powdered?
think maybe you might be thinking of a weird Piziza that I picked a few years ago.
No,
didn't
no,
know
I
what it
believe I
was.
found you with, you had the correct name, I even believe. But I may be
Oh,
wrong
geez, I
because this was in the
forget.
summer, so I really can't
Oh, I
remember that much.
forget. I'll have to look that up. Oh, okay.
So I don't know if Maricel's still on or not, but she did the microscope.
She had to leave her back. She injured her back and she just couldn't sit it for too long.
Oh, that's too bad.
Was
But
that
yeah, if you
last
show
one?
her,
Was that last one? I missed some of the micro. Was it an ASCO or a
it's a cup
perennial?
fungi, so yes, it's ASCO. I think it's ASCO, right? If it's cup, it's usually
Yeah,
ASCO.
one of
Yes,
the
it's an
micro
Asco.
photos showed an ascus.
Yeah, if you look at the descriptions of the microscopic features on Mushroom Expert, it tells you something unusual about what it is. That's what was interesting. What was it?
Cool, thanks.
Terminal cells that swell. Things that I don't know because I haven't gotten to the microscopic stuff yet in my life here. Anyway, that was the first one. The second one, this one also I don't believe was on our club list, but I found it when I found it again locally. It looked, I had never seen it before, but this one was in the new Bizet polypore book, and it matched perfectly. It's a very thin sort of stereum-like thing, but it's very large panels. It was near a base of a huge log in a very sort of almost a wetland area. It tends to get flooded by the river, but of course not this year. So I just took a slice of it to show you that it's just pieces of it. But it's in the Bissett book, and if I ever see it again, I'll know what it is because I have not seen it on the forays before.
And you will save a specimen for our herbarium, right, Sue?
I don't have a way to dry anything, so I didn't do any of this.
Oh, those don't need to be dried.
Oh, they don't? Well, if I, yeah, well, it's in a place where you shouldn't be collecting at all because it's in a county reservation. So I left
Well,
everything.
nobody has to know.
Yeah, I know nobody has to know unless you make it official. But yeah, this and the other cup fungus. Again, I'd never seen either of this before, and because it was an unusual year, I didn't see the normal stuff, and I was going to more perceive wet locations that I would normally have gone.
Seems
Those are my two.
pretty confused. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, sorry about that. Was this pretty easy to cut or was it kind of tough?
I think it was resistant, like even a stereum would be hard to cut if you try to slice up a space. I mean, it was big enough to cut because it was so big, you could cut it. But it was, yeah, I don't know even why I had that. It's so very rectangular, isn't it? But yeah, I think I probably didn't want to pull it all the way out from the log. I just needed to see, you know, how thin it was and try to get a spore print. And I don't know if I put in the notes where the spore print was, but I can't find this. This is not on Mushroom Expert, but it was in Bissette's book.
So just looking at this, right, I've never seen it before, and I'm just thinking that it seems easily confused with the Xylobolus subpileatus. Is it not easily confused?
I don't know that species. It doesn't look like a Xylobolus.
I was thinking that too. It looks pretty similar to that, but maybe not so much the cap. Although it is.
That was that was the reason I asked about whether it was easy to cut through. Because I think Xylobolus subpileatus is, you know, pretty tough.
Yeah, super tough.
Super tough.
Well, I was able to cut it with a regular knife, so I don't think it was that particularly tough.
So more tender than that, and maybe larger.
Oh, it was pretty large. I mean, hand size. And it was very low to the ground on the logs, down logs. If we look at the polypore book, the ones that's in the polypore book are very small compared to the ones I were finding. But those are the two
that's
species
really cool.
I can see.
Yeah, I'll have to look at in the polypore book, the newest one from the Bassett's, right?
Yes,
Okay,
it's on page, I think I'm on page 109, 109. Really, you know,
I would compare that with the Syllabolous one. I'm not familiar with this one myself.
yeah.
But
And
it
we wouldn't have
does-
been able to get that name unless the polypore book had come out.
yeah, so there's
But-
probably a lot of, some of this out there being called Xylobolus subpileatus. I wouldn't be surprised. Interesting.
The top of it looks like a Hymenocadiae. Like what are the two like Hymenocadiae rugosa? You didn't put any KOH on it, did you?
No, unless I took a picture of it with KOH, no.
Yeah, that's another possibility you could look at too. Hymenocadiae rubiniginosa.
I was very happy with this identification. Don't spoil it on me.
Sorry, there's just you know what? I think there's just probably a few
It
other
doesn't
things.
remind, it does not remind me of a Hymenocadus.
Hymenocadiae?
Yeah, it's not, I don't know, the surface just didn't, it doesn't, aren't those usually like stickies, you know, pointy kind of things coming up at you? But this one is really not like that. I might have
yeah,
just
like-
magnified it in what it looks like, you know.
Yeah, on a like a under a loop, you see that stuff.
Yeah.
I always separate those out really quickly by putting KOH on them, and they will turn
Okay.
instantly black in KOH, whereas this probably would not because it's in polyporales. Cool. I'll have to look that name up.
Yeah, these did not, almost everything was straightly reflexed out. It didn't have anything that went along the log, just sort of came right out. I mean, it went up and then out, but more like a Ganoderma in appearance. But those are my two.
All right, cool.
Interesting.
Good finds.
That was it, Mike.
So it's 9 o'clock. Are there any last minute shares or shall we call it a night?
For as
You know,
dry
should I
as it
show
was-
them? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for as dry as it was, I think this shows that 2022 was actually a pretty interesting year.
Yeah. People found things they don't usually find.
But no pretty coral mushrooms, did we?
Igor, should I show that mushroom that I sent to you when I was at oh, what park was that? Hold on. I have to remember what park it is. I have it in the map. Remember the bolete that had huge verticulations, the white one?
Yeah, go ahead. It's not a very common one.
Okay.
Okay, before you
Yep.
share that, right
Yeah.
before you share that, because I'm gonna get going. We had said next week we were gonna do do like online ID, iNaturalists, and mushroom observers. Everybody still good with that?
Works for me.
I'm sorry, Luke, how's that gonna work?
I'll share from my screen. I'll go into either one of those programs and we'll look at stuff. I'll set a filter up. So we're looking at New Jersey mushrooms and just work on identifying stuff.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I had thrown it out like about a month ago. We were talking about different things and a few people had said that they enjoyed doing that last year. So we set a date to do it again this year. Okay, cool. Well, then I want to say goodnight to everyone. Thanks.
Night, Luke.
Thanks, Mike, for
Bye.
hosting. And I'll see you guys next
Thanks
week.
for your help sharing, Luke.